In this lesson, we are going to learn a few more verb inflections, specifically the imperfect and future tense for regular verbs. This means that you will need your blue verb chart. Make sure that you pause the video and fill in all of the endings in the small boxes and the translations on the right side of the chart. Of course, we know that the present tense is to communicate actions that are taking place now. That's why we are able to translate them with the verb using am, is, or are as the helping verb, or does, or just in the simple present tense with something like walk or walks. The imperfect tense is a type of past tense used for telling stories. You can see that you can translate it by using was or were with the ing form of the verb, like was or were walking. You can translate it in the simple past tense, walked, and you can even use the translation that's used to do the action. This is all something that is in the imperfect or a past tense. Of course, the future tense is in the future, and you should notice that there are two different sets of endings that you might see on words. We'll talk about when we should use the two different sets when we're ready to write verbs into Latin. For right now, understand that the future tense, when you're reading, will be easily recognized because of clue words in the sentence that help you to understand that the action is in the future. Words like soon or tomorrow or one day, they indicate to us that something will be happening in the future. So using the future tense will be natural for you because the context of what you're reading will help you to see that you need the future tense. Now that you're looking at this chart with all of the rest of the endings on it, you might begin to feel a bit overwhelmed as to how you're going to remember everything. So in this part of the lesson, I want to talk about some things that you need to notice which will help remembering all of the different endings much easier for you. When we first learned about verb endings, one of the very first things we learned was that the ending communicates what subject the verb has, and that subject can be noticed by the ending on the verb. The subjects translate into pronouns in English, like I or you, he, we, or they. It is absolutely imperative that you remember which ending on the verb represents each pronoun subject. Let's review that now. Remember that when you see the letters O or M on the end of a verb, it means that the subject is I. It doesn't matter what tense the ending is. It only matters that you see the letter O or M on the end of it. So everything in the first person singular column, which represents the subject I, ends with the letters O or M. That's how you will always know that the subject is I. You must commit that simple fact to memory. O or M equals the subject I. The second person singular subject is you. Do you notice that in every ending for the present, the imperfect, and the future tense, you see the letter S on the end of the verb ending? That's because the letter S represents the subject you, no matter what tense you see it in. You must also commit this fact to memory. S equals the subject you. Now let's talk about the third person singular, which represents the subjects he, she, or it. Remember that when you see the ending T on a verb, that verb has the subject he, she, or it. But you might also have as the subject of a verb that ends with T a noun in the singular form, like girl or horse or servant or master. When you see a nominative singular noun in the sentence, you will not use the pronoun subject he, she, or it. Instead, you will use the noun. Notice that every ending in the third person singular column ends with the letter T. This is how you will always know that the subject of the sentence is he, she, or it, or the nominative singular noun in the sentence. It is extremely important that you commit this fact to memory. T is the subject he, she, or it, or a nominative case noun is the subject when T is the ending. Now we are going to review the first person plural ending. First person plural represents the subject we. Whenever we see mus as the inflection on a verb, it will have the subject of we. Notice that every inflection in the first person plural column ends with the same three letters, mus. This is how you will always be able to tell that the subject of the verb is we. It is extremely important that you commit to memory the fact that the inflection mus represents the subject we. The next column on the chart is for the second person plural. This is also the pronoun subject you in English. Sometimes we'll say y'all, but it is not necessary. We just need to remember that you is the subject. TIS is the inflectional ending that represents the subject you. Notice that on every ending in the second person plural column, the last three letters are TIS. This allows us to know that the subject of the verb is you. The tense will never change the subject ending. Make sure you commit to memory the fact that the inflectional ending TIS represents the subject you, and that you understand that this you is plural. We have finally arrived to the third person plural column, the last column of endings for verbs on our chart. The third person plural represents the pronoun subject they. Remember that in a sentence where you see the letters NT on a verb, you may use the pronoun they as a subject. You may also use two nouns that are in the nominative singular as the subject. Or you can even use a noun that is in the nominative plural for the subject. When you do have two nouns in the nominative singular or a noun in the nominative plural and use those as the subject, you will not need to include the pronoun they in the sentence. Remember that the tense of a verb never changes its subject inflection. For this reason, when you look at the third person plural column, you should notice that you see the letters NT on every inflection, because those two letters indicate to you that the verb is using they as the subject, or two singular nouns, or a nominative plural noun. Make sure that you commit to memory the fact that NT represents a plural third person subject, like two nouns, or in the singular, or one plural noun, or that it represents the subject they.